Momaw Nadon was a male Ithorian from the lush jungle world of Ithor in the Mid-Rim. Before the Galactic Civil War broke out in earnest, Nadon was an important figure on his planet. An Imperial captain called Alima arrives on Ithor looking to exploit its natural resources. And not just the ones that the Empire could physically extract from the planet, but the agricultural knowledge that the Ithorians had gained over generations. The Empire threatened to destroy groves of bafor trees, which were sacred to the Ithorian culture. Nadon sacrifices his standing with his people and agrees to reveal the secrets if the groves would be spared. Shockingly, the Empire upheld their end of the bargain. The groves were spared. Nadon was banished from his planet and civilization. The agricultural secrets of Ithor are their most sacred knowledge. Sharing it with anybody, regardless of the situation, was strictly forbidden. Nadon's exile lands him on Tatooine. With a whole galaxy to choose from, I couldn't find a clear answer as to why he chose such a desolate desert planet where plants and agriculture were his passion and his culture. He puts his skills to the test, and he begins a small Ithorian garden, including those sacred bafor trees, hidden in the mountains south of Mos Eisley. He did his best to go unnoticed in his new surroundings. He keeps his head down, he didn't make friends, and he avoided trouble wherever he could. He was referred to simply as Hammerhead by others in Mos Eisley when he had to wander into town. This name wasn't specific to him, but a slag term for all Ithorians throughout the galaxy. For a guy who wanted to avoid trouble, he would cross a pretty major line because the Empire threatening his home, which led to his exile. Nadon hated the Empire. He quietly rooted for the Rebel Alliance and would even hide members of the rebellion in his garden. The environment that he now lived in and the beings around him were harsh and inhospitable, but the gentle Ithorian never lost his compassion, kindness, and love for living things. This desire to be around life leads him to become a semi-regular at Chalmun's Cantina. He would sit alone, nursing a drink, not directly interacting with anyone if he could help it. Trouble must have found him a time or two, as he started the habit of carrying a heavy, dense wooden walking stick. It was for protection more than any actual assistance in getting around. One of Nadon's trips to the Cantina would put him along the path of the fate of the entire galaxy. He was present when a young farm boy who would become crucial in defeating the ultimate evil and liberating a galaxy was defended by a Jedi Master who served the galaxy in a past age. When stormtroopers barged into the Cantina after some commotion caused by the farm boy and his companion, along with a known smuggler gunning down a known bounty hunter, everyone kept their mouths shut. No one had any love for the Empire in the Outer Rim. This is actually the end of Nadon's canon story, but his legend goes much deeper. Rewinding things just a bit to before the events of Chalmun's Cantina as seen in A New Hope. Alima, the very same man who gave Nadon the impossible choice that led to his banishment, arrives in Mos Eisley looking for a pair of missing droids. Threatening Nadon's plans worked the first time that Alima destroyed his life, so after discovering an exiled Ithorian and a secret garden, it wasn't hard for Alima to connect the dots. He once again threatens Nadon, saying that if he did not help track down the droids, the garden that he had been cultivating would be destroyed. I don't know why Alima would think that a guy that he knows is not a local would have any information, but cruelty doesn't have to make any sense. The peaceful, life-loving Ithorian has had enough. He decides that killing Alima will save his garden and the droids. He waits to ambush Alima when he's alone. If you're getting value or entertainment out of any of my transmissions, it would mean a lot if you would join the Remnant and subscribe. Unfortunately, Nadon is far from a warrior. Alima quickly gets the upper hand in the fight and beats him up. He lets him live to try to extort that help that he needed, and he does not see the Ithorian as a threat. Alima had cost Nadon his home, family, and culture. Now he's taken Nadon's personal beliefs on nonviolence. Yes, of course, Nadon did make the choice to attack Alima, but you could also argue that he was painted into a corner and one being can only take so much. Nadon then sees a pair of droids with a mysterious old man and young farmer. We all know the details that follow, but this time Nadon has context for much of what's going on. The stakes are way higher than a simple bar fight. As happy as Nadon is to learn that the Misfit band was able to blast their way out of Mos Eisley Spaceport, fleeing the Empire and taking a handful of them down in the process, he's now scared that Alima would find his way back into town to stick the blame on Nadon. Nadon gets smart and starts to use the Imperial systems that had damaged his own life so much against Alima. He finds a higher-ranking Imperial agent and tells him that Alima knew that the droids would be leaving on that very ship. Nadon claims to be the very informant who gave him the information. This higher-ranking Imperial was looking for a scapegoat, and Alima was gunned down without hesitation. I guess if you're dead, you can't argue the point. Nadon's emotions were once again a whirlwind of confusion. He was relieved that the rebels, or a close enough term for our purposes, got away. He was safe, and his plants were safe. But someone who valued life just led to the execution of a man who, while not exactly innocent, was killed for something that he didn't do. Ithorian culture has a spiritual doctrine called the Law of Life. Simply put, this states that the taking of a life creates a debt that must be repaid. Don gathers some DNA from Alima's corpse and takes it back to the lab that he had set up in his secret garden. Yes, things are jumping and shifting and escalating drastically at this point. The lab had been instrumental in him helping him grow his plants, especially in an environment like that on Tatooine. Now he would be using that to make clones of Alima. He saw these as the offspring of Alima, who were created from the man, but free from the wrongdoings and cruelty that plagued him. 2 clones were made rather than 1. One so that Alima could repay the debt to the Ithorians, and the second one was Nadon repaying his debt to Alima. The 2 were raised as Nadon's own sons. He teaches them Ithorian culture, agriculture practices, and values of respecting life. This simple way of life and fatherhood takes Nadon out of the galactic note until after the defeat of Palpatine in ABY-4. At this time of change in the galaxy, the Ithorians lifted Nadon's ban, and he was allowed to return home. He was no longer seen as someone who sold out his culture's secrets, but as a true leader who made a noble sacrifice to preserve life. He's reinstated as a leader of the Tafanda Bay herdship. ABY-11 sees representatives of the New Republic, Wedge Antilles and Qui Zux, and I don't know how to pronounce that name, I've only ever read it, visit Ithor, where they are greeted by Nadon himself. Zux is an interesting Legends character who needs some redemption that we'll cover in another transmission. Nadon's 2 human sons are by his side through all of this. There must have been rumors of how this Ithorian ended up raising 2 humans, but he keeps their origin a secret. He would go on to marry an Ithorian woman, Fandomar, and have a biological son, Do Faro Nadon. His family and people live in peace for many years. As age catches up with him, he would step down as the High Priest and R'Lal Torun would take his place, sometime before ABY-25. That year saw the long peace shattered as the Yuuzhan Vong War broke out across the galaxy and devastated much of the Ithorian jungles. Audiences were first introduced to Momaw Nadon in 1997's A New Hope. He was one of very many wild creatures created or repurposed to fill out the Cantina scene. In the movie, he wasn't credited or given a name. The first name he ever had, Hammerhead, was given to him in 1978 when he was immortalized in Kenner's action figure line. In 1989, West End Games' Galaxy Guide No. 1, A New Hope, was the first place the name Momaw Nadon and some of his backstory were filled in. The West End Games books are actually source books for a Dungeons & Dragons-like role-playing game set in the Star Wars universe. These books have supplied so much early lore to Star Wars fans. The main takeaway at this time was Nadon being exiled for revealing Ithorian secrets. The story was fully fleshed out in 1995 by Dave Wolverton in the popular Legends anthology novel Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina. The short focusing on Nadon is called The Sand Tender, The Hammerhead's Tale. Nadon would also cameo in Kevin J. Anderson's Jedi Academy novels, also from the 1990s. Although Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina and even the Jedi Academy novels are legends, some elements have found their way into canon. The reference book Ultimate Star Wars from 2015 made Nadon's name and the broad strokes of his backstory canon. A databank article on StarWars.com also mentions his secret garden and sympathies for the rebellion. Like many characters from Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina, Nadon shows up in 2017's From a Certain Point of View, though it's another cameo, not a full story focused all on the Hammerhead. In A New Hope, he was brought to life by John Berg and Phil Tippett. He was a giant puppet. The 2 special effects masters worked together to simply have his head turn and raise a glass to take a drink. This is a convincing bit of movie magic that's evolved into a life-size animatronic of Doc Ondar in Galaxy's Edge. Ralph McQuarrie had created the initial Ithorian look. It changed a bit as the puppet was created, but the shape of the head and the double mouth anatomy, which are key details of the Ithorians, remained. Check out this video next to dive into the stories of more of the patrons from Chalmun's Cantina as seen in A New Hope.